The four boys of Team Yu Yu Hakusho need little introduction. Yusuke, Kuwabara, Hiei, and Kurama. Fans of the series often cite this core friendship as one of, if not the most universally enjoyable part of the series. However, I've seen little discussion of what aspects really make the team shine as well as they do. For the four leads of Hunter x Hunter, what unites them was made more explicit in the narrative and themes of the work. They're united by the desire to improve, by genuinely caring hearts, and by unrelenting desire to follow their passions. Team Hakusho remains united by similar threads so closely interlinked that I hadn't even thought about how similar in effect all four characters really are. Team Hakusho is linked by the interplay between friendship, duty, and desire for self-determination. Each character acts as a foil for the other, naturally being complementary and strengthening the group dynamic to a mere shine. Yusuke and Hiei, in my eyes, are both fairly straightforward foils that are easy enough to see. Both born into demonhood, both start off as initially alienated, both learn the value of connection, and both learn the value of punching up and not down. Yusuke through a love of martial arts, and Hiei after visiting his homeland. Kuwabara and Kurama have a similar dynamic that's less immediately visible, but works in a similar way. Both were born into humanity, both intrinsically value connection as opposed to their counterparts. But most importantly, both struggle with their identity and will as a result of being so externally defined, as opposed to internally, like Yusuke and Hiei. What do I mean by that? Let's start with Kuwabara. Is he truly the apex of masculinity that viewers build him up to be? Yes and no. I think the sole ideal character Togashi created to be everything he represents is Ging Freaks. You may not like it, but this is peak performance. In that light, I see Yusuke and Kuwabara as two halves of the whole. Yusuke struggles with his own self-determination, but Kuwabara in contrast has no will of his own. He's defined completely externally by his relationships with others. If you pay close attention to how Kuwabara is framed, he is almost never actually alone. He's always either surrounded by his gang, with Yusuke, or if nothing else, giving attention to his adorable kitten. Even going back as far as in his introductory episode, for someone who only ever got into fights with Yusuke, Kuwabara had a mental breakdown losing him. One that would be echoed in Chapter Black by him saying,
Urameshi, you died a hero's death, sacrificing your life to save billions of others. You've lit our torches and I won't let your death be in vain, even if it means I'll be joining you soon.
I'd also like to point out that none of this speech is in the manga. The anime really hit it home here, but in general Togashi avoids flashback as a rule it seems. Our relationships define us just as much as we define ourselves. In Yusuke, Kuwabara had found a truly worthy rival. Losing him is not unlike losing another piece of yourself. It's akin to Crollo using Uvogin. And what of Kurama? On the surface, it would appear like he has mostly everything put together. He clearly knows he wants to protect his mother and safeguard his close friends. But Kurama suffers a very real degree of anxiety over two major occurrences throughout the story. The first occurs when his powers of Yoko Kurama slowly begin to return to him. It starts to prompt a crisis of identity, and you can often see him mentally separating himself from Shuichi Minamino. In his previous life as a thief, Yoko did all sorts of treacherous things that would come back to haunt him, things he would rather forget. And I think it's this pull between having lived a life of stealing precious things from people, only to regret it all in the end, is why Kurama doesn't value his own life. Kuwabara and Kurama are the most self-sacrificing members of Team Hakusho, which says a lot when Yusuke is on that same team. Kuwabara was ready to lay down his life for Yusuke at the Dark Tournament, and it was only by mercy that he didn't actually die. And while this self-sacrificing streak is treated as a noble trait, if you only sacrifice yourself, how much of your own life will you get the opportunity to live? If Kuwabara keeps disregarding himself, he may very well have almost bit the bullet like another character almost did, just like when Kurama tried to sacrifice himself to the mirror to save his mother, or when he gave his life to take down his opponent in the Dark Tournament. Knowing the core of these two character arcs make their surface level details shine all the more. Kuwabara is an oaf, full of bravado, not very good around the eyes. Kurama is a genius, quiet and subdued, and Bishonen to the core. So where do they go? Hakusho is a series about balancing personal determination with understanding the wishes of others. So it only follows that these two good boys would have fulfilling narrative conclusions. Well, that's where fans seem to split in not understanding Togashi's vision, in addition to where the anime's extra content turns this from a grounder to a home run. Now for my most heretical opinion that most fans of the series will reject outright. Kuwabara being left out of the Three Kings arc is the perfect way to end his development, and for anything else to happen would be a complete mistake. Let's just ignore the obvious facts like Kuwabara would not last a day in the demon world with his paltry power level, or that nothing about going to the demon world would accomplish anything for his life, aside from fan pandering for more action. Now, the real meat of Kuwabara going home to study for his exams is that for the first time in the entire series, he's putting his own life first before casting it all off to do what someone else wants. There would be no point in him going along, and really, it's nothing but irresponsible for him to do so. What really makes this decision matter is that the advice comes from Yusuke himself, telling him to study hard, signifying that Yusuke, through all of his hardship, understands how important this would be for him. Kuwabara, given his powers, probably couldn't be stopped from going to the demon world if he so wanted. His blade slices dimensions open, so he could very well exercise his power and find his way from there. But one of the messages of Yu Yu Hakusho, especially in the Three Kings arc, is that you don't have to use your powers, just because your instincts say you should. Kuwabara set himself on the right path that day, and it's the one that he deserves, to walk for his own future. When we turn to Kurama, it's notable that his development in the Three Kings arc is greatly expanded by his fight with the samurai Shigure. The setup for Kurama's arc is that he's invited back to the demon world by an old compatriot of his named Yomi, stating that he's finally found out who stole his light. No, Yomi is certainly one of, if not the most interesting character in Yu Yu Hakusho, second to only Yusuke himself. When I think of a character that truly embodies all the series has to offer, he would be the first one I think of, but that's another post entirely. For now, I want to mention that his usage of the word light both refers to the person that stole his sight, and for Kurama, doubles down on several themes of the series at once. The first being the main theme of coming back to life after losing everything. The second being a callback to when Kurama fought the ice ninja that sought light and revolution. And finally, it's a reminder to Kurama's own past choices, where he ruthlessly stole things people held dear. When Kurama finds himself invited to Yomi City, he also finds himself acting more and more like the person he had left behind, more like Yoko. While Kurama was never a stranger to acting malicious and devious throughout the series, it always came with a real degree of tension. The difference then was that his rowdy group of friends was always there to ground him back, inside his life of Shuichi Minamino, or Kurama, as opposed to Yoko Kurama. Now, in the demon world, surrounded by enemies, threatening his well-being as well as his family's, there's little stopping him from slowly reverting back to Yoko Kurama. He needed to do it to survive, much the same way he had to repeatedly call on his former life powers and ruthlessness to survive the Dark Tournament arc, and Sensui. Now, I'd like to break from this and come back around to Shigure, the samurai who Hiei told his life story to, and also taught him swordsmanship. In truth, the anime mostly pulled Shigure out of a rabbit's hat and awkwardly grafted samurai aesthetics onto the character. In the manga, after Shigure gets his head lopped off by Hiei, he doesn't really come back, barring one scene in the very end, where he's talking about how soft Mukuru has become. In the anime, however, Shigure takes an active role in the tournament for the next Demon World King, and ends up fighting Kurama. Kurama, having been forced to rely on Yoko's mindset and power more than once, is reluctant to keep using it, as he remembers his life and his friends as Shuichi Minamino. And it's in this struggle that grafting the aesthetics of a swordsman who wants to win proudly onto Shigure and having him fight Kurama transform this entirely anime original fight into one of the most memorable battles in anime history. Kurama wins the fight not just through claiming his power as his own, using the seeds he planted so long ago. He wins by finally accepting himself, not just by letting go of his past, but by choosing his future as Kurama, as Shuichi Minamino, and not Yoko Kurama. It's through choosing the things he's come to love in his human life that he finds his self-worth, finally content, knowing that he's chosen his own way of living. As the cherry blossoms, signifying the fleeting nature of life and death, fall around them, Shigure offers Kurama a piece of advice.
I must admit, these are some of the most beautiful flowers I've ever seen.
Yes.
Cherish them.
Shigure, what are you doing?
A true swordsman can never lose twice. This is the only way.
Shigure loses and commits an honorable death of his own accord, because for him, that's what his life entails, drawing both his life and Kurama's arc to a close.